10 Surprising Facts About the Movie Jaws. Jaws is often called the original summer blockbuster, so before the next glut of CGI-laden superhero movies fills screens worldwide, why not read a few lesser-known facts about the OG blockbuster that set the precedent that allows them to exist? Starting with 10. Jaws was a PG release. Jaws is a film that contains a scene of a man being brutally eaten alive by a shark while screaming. Fun fact, the actor supposedly broke his leg during that scene, so the screams of pain you hear are real, people having the limbs shorn off, and the most iconic jump scare in cinema history. On top of this, the film also involves scenes involving drinking, smoking, swearing, and at least one instance of a shark eating a chubby kid on a raft. Amazingly, censors of the time saw all this and thought to themselves, yeah, this seems suitable for kids. Because yeah, Jaws was a PG-rated movie, meaning anyone could go watch this thing so long as they had parental supervision, even if they were still at risk of pooping their pants literally instead of metaphorically. Think about that the next time you go watch an Avengers movie and realize it's a PG-13 because Sam Jackson says the F word. 9. It originally starred dwarf stuntmen. The undeniable star of Jaws is the shark, a role that was variously played by a notoriously unreliable mechanical shark, which we'll get to in a moment, and several real sharks filmed by the crew. The problem was that the shark, who we'll just call Jaws even though he had a name, which we'll also get to, is supposed to be a shark of exceptional size, which kind of created a problem when the crew went to film some real great whites and realized they'd look noticeably smaller than the robo-shark. An ingenious solution was found in the form of several midget stuntmen. The idea was to dress these stuntmen up in the same diving suits as the regular cast and film them next to some average-size great whites, creating a forced perspective that made the sharks look super huge and buff. To complete the illusion, the production team even built a smaller version of the shark cage scene at the end of the movie that the stuntmen were supposed to float around in. This cage wasn't built as sturdily as an actual shark cage, and as a result, before one of the stuntmen could climb inside it, a great white tore it to pieces. This led to a total rewrite to ensure. 8. Hooper survived because footage of the cage being destroyed was too good not to use. The footage of a shark tearing apart the shark cage at the climax of the movie was 100% real and was so good Spielberg insisted that it had to go into the movie. The problem was that the original script called for Hooper to be inside the cage at the time, and for him to be killed in the ensuing attack, just like in the book. Another problem was that after seeing a shark tear apart a shark-proof cage, none of the stuntmen would get back into the water. Not wanting to lose the footage, a hasty rewrite was made to show that Hooper survived by swimming to the bottom of the ocean and hiding from the shark. This change also allowed the editors to use footage of the shark attacking from below, where it's most obvious nobody is in the cage, framing it as if it's from Hooper's point of view as he cowered from the shark in a steadily growing cloud of his own urine. 7. Spielberg laughed when he first heard the theme. John Williams' theme for Jaws is one of the most iconic in all of cinema. Countless articles and academic papers have been written exploring the deceptive depth of the theme and how it affects those who hear it on an almost primal level. Though considered an integral part of the film's success today, Spielberg was apparently not all that impressed with the theme when he first heard it. In fact, he laughed out loud when Williams played it for him. You see, Spielberg had assumed that the film's score would be more akin to that of a swashbuckling pirate movie and thought Williams' minimalist take on the theme was too Spartan. However, Spielberg deferred to Williams' judgment for final decision, apparently quipping, "Okay, let's give it a shot," when Williams insisted the theme would work. We're assuming Spielberg has never since questioned Williams' judgment after the success of Jaws. 6. The shark sank the first time it was put into the water. As noted previously, the robo-shark used for many of the close-ups in the movie was unreliable to an almost comical degree. This is no better summed up than by what the shark did the very first time it was lowered into the water. It sank like a depressed brick of lead with concrete shoes. Apparently it hadn't occurred to anybody to check if the shark floated while making it. Along with sinking, the shark often malfunctioned and would sometimes simply stop working for no reason at all. This not only caused the movie to fall 100 days behind schedule, but also meant that half the shots of the movie involving the shark didn't have the shark in frame. Curiously, it's been noted that the fact Spielberg had to film around the fact the shark wasn't there most of the time, instead having to suggest its presence, made the movie better. Which kind of makes sense. The reason Jaws is such a scary movie is because there's a constant threat that the shark could appear at any moment and chow down on your butthole. If the shark had been on screen for 50% of the movie like Spielberg had originally planned, its few sporadic appearances would have had less impact. So yeah, when you watch Jaws and find yourself feeling on edge throughout the entire film, that wouldn't be the case if the shark had actually worked and you could have seen how crappy it actually looked most of the time. 5. The shark's name was Bruce. The shark in Jaws is always referred to as either, simply, the shark or else Jaws, which is weird since throughout filming his name was Bruce. The name is supposedly a name coined by the production crew as a nod to Spielberg's lawyer Bruce Rayner who, like the shark, was a bit temperamental. Spielberg himself wasn't personally a fan of the name since, unlike the mechanical shark, his lawyer sometimes actually worked. So instead, he came up with an altogether more apt nickname considering the numerous mechanical faults the shark suffered throughout production, the Great White Turd. 4. Spielberg spent $3,000 of his own money for one more scream. Jaws, hands down, contains one of the single greatest jump scares in cinema history. We're of course talking about when Hooper finds Ben Gardner's boat, and a big rubber head comes flying out of a shark-shaped hole in the hull. That scene wasn't in the original cut of the movie and was only added after Spielberg watched the audience reaction to the reveal of the shark at the film's climax, the bit immediately prior to the "we're gonna need a bigger boat" line, and realized the reaction wasn't as intense as he'd hoped. So Spielberg went back to the studio and asked for $3,000 to film another scene with a bigger jump scare and promptly got told not to do one. To be fair to the production company, the film was 100 days behind schedule and over budget, so they were within their right to say no, but luckily for us, Spielberg didn't take no for an answer. With the studio refusing to pony up the cash, Spielberg decided to film the scene in someone's pool using his own money. To make the water look more like the kind of place you'd find a sunken boat, Spielberg had the pool filled with milk powder and then put a big tarp over the top to limit the amount of light that got through to the bottom. Admittedly greedy for one more scream, the director then instructed the sound engineers to make the jump scare happen before the music reached its natural crescendo, to make everyone poop their pants the first time they saw it. 3. It had one of the widest releases of any film ever. Jaws was, as noted, one of the first, if not the first, major summer blockbusters. In fact, prior to the release of Jaws and then Star Wars a few years later, the summer was considered a low period for cinemas since it was believed nobody would waste a ball-sweltering summer's day sitting in a cool, air-conditioned cinema. Oh, how wrong they were. Upon release, Jaws set numerous records for having such a wide release, opening in some 400 cinemas on its first day. But here's the really crazy part, Jaws was such a massive phenomenon that the number of cinemas screening it across the US more than doubled over the course of 2 months. This was unheard of back then and rarely, if ever, happens today since most films make the bulk of their money in the opening weekend. It's a testament then to the sheer inertia of Jaws that after 2 months at the cinema, demand was still so high 500 more theaters decided to screen it, too. 2. It kinda ruined sharks, and beaches, for everyone. As noted in the previous entry, releasing a film during the summer season used to be considered box office suicide since it was believed everyone would be too busy having fun at the beach. Jaws changed all that, and during the summer of 1975 beach attendance fell nationwide. The drop in beach attendance was credited to both the success of the film, which saw millions of Americans flock to cinemas, as well as the fact it kind of made it scary to go into the water. Speaking of which, the film is still criticized today for painting an unnecessarily harsh and objectively incorrect picture of sharks, which hardly ever attack humans. However, The success of Jaws saw shark attacks not only being reported upon more often, creating the false impression that they were more common than they actually are, but also a more negative perception of the animal, which led to many of them being killed for no real reason. All of which kind of leaves a sour taste in our mouths, so let's end on something a little lighter, specifically that. 1. Michael Caine loved the fourth movie. To date, Jaws has made more money and has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than all three of its sequels combined. The fourth film in particular has an impressive 0% rating on the website, and is largely considered to be the biggest cinematic turd since the one Jeff Goldblum finds in Jurassic Park. According to critics, the film has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and is more painful to sit through than a prostate exam from a pirate with hand trimmers. One person who disagrees is Michael Caine, who has said of the film, "I have never seen it, but by all accounts it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that it built, and it is terrific." Along with being paid a pretty penny for starring in the film, Caine has praised the fact that it features a realistic romance between two middle-aged people, something that's rarely seen in cinema, and enjoyed that he basically got a free trip to the Bahamas. In case you're thinking that Caine is only positive about the film because he got a free vacation out of it, starring in the film caused him to miss the 1987 Oscars. And it's important to note, he actually won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year, for the film Hannah and Her Sisters. In other words, Michael Caine had so much fun pretending to fight a giant, fake shark in a terrible Jaws sequel he didn't mind not collecting the most prestigious award for acting in person.